was everything I dreamed it would be and more.
You've heard their music at cookouts, in the car, late on a Friday night when you didn't want the song to end. But here's what nobody says out loud. The bigger these groups got, the more the industry, the critics, the gatekeepers tried to bury them. And every single time, the people kept buying.
Say my name, no one is around you.
12 groups, 12 different kinds of hate, and one answer that never changed. Number 12, Color Me Bad. Here's a line from an actual music review, 1991, about one of the biggest selling groups of that year. They don't play any instruments. They don't write most of their material. And for all I know, it's not even their real vocals. That was the Village Voice. And the group they were describing was 4 guys from Oklahoma City who were about to go triple platinum.
Oh, you feel so right.
Color Me Bad didn't come from New York, didn't come from Atlanta, didn't come from anywhere the music industry was watching. 4 kids from Oklahoma, singing together since high school choir, honing harmonies that could stop a room cold. Their multiracial lineup, 1 black member, 1 Latino member, 2 white members, made radio programmers nervous and critics suspicious. Which box do you put them in? What audience do you build around them? The machine didn't have an answer, and they nearly didn't get an answer at all.
I can't deny, baby.
Because I Wanna Sex You Up, the song that would define their career, was passed over by Biv DeVoe. Keith Sweat passed on it. Christopher Williams didn't want it either. It landed with Color Me Bad because nobody else wanted it. And then it hit number 1 on the R&B chart. And the album that followed, their debut, CMB, went triple platinum. 2 Hot 100 number 1 singles in a row. By the end of 1992, they finished second only to Boyz II Men as the top pop singles act of the entire year. But the criticism never stopped. Critics called them manufactured, questioned whether those were even their real voices on the record. Their multiracial lineup, something that should have been celebrated, kept getting treated like a liability. Too smooth for the hip-hop crowd, too street for traditional R&B radio, and according to the press, too polished to be legitimate. And if you've ever done everything right and still had someone tell you it doesn't count, you know exactly how that feels. Color Me Bad had 4 top 5 singles before most critics would even give them a complete review. Their debut album spent 77 weeks on the Billboard 200. 77. That's not a hit. That's a fixture. That's what happens when real people, not critics, keep going back to the store. And the song that nobody wanted, the one that Biv DeVoe, Keith Sweat, and Christopher Williams all turned down, it became one of the defining records of the entire early 90s R&B era. You can be completely dismissed, completely underestimated, and still outsell your critics by several million copies. Color Me Bad figured that out before most people were ready to admit it. Number 11, SWV. Most groups get torn apart by the public, or by the press, or by their label. SWV got torn apart from the inside, by the very machine that was supposed to be making them stars. And the part that doesn't get talked about enough. At the lowest point of their breakup in 1999, One member of SWV climbed onto the balcony of an 11th floor hotel room in Times Square. She was one phone call away from not making it. Coco, Taj Lele, three women from the Bronx and Brooklyn who started singing in church, came up through gospel, and showed up to an RCA Records audition with a demo tape and a bottle of Perrier because they couldn't afford champagne. They got signed, and then Weak hit #1 on both the R&B chart and the Hot 100. Right here, Human Nature followed. I'm So Into You. Hit after hit after hit, but the label had a plan that only one of them fully knew about. RCA wanted Coco to be the Diana Ross of the group, the undisputed star, the face, and they made sure she knew it. What the label didn't fully account for was what that would do to the two women standing next to her. Taj and Lele weren't just background singers. They were sisters, not by blood, but by everything that matters. And slowly, quietly, the label's push began reshaping a dynamic that none of them had fully chosen. By the time SWV disbanded in 1998, the friendship was gone, the unity was gone, the money had created divisions that music alone couldn't heal. How they split their earnings had been an open wound for years. And Lele, who had started the group at 17 as a mother of two, needing this to work for her kids, found herself in a Times Square hotel with nothing left. No dollar in her pocket, no plan, standing on an 11th floor balcony trying to decide whether to call her sister. She called, and she came home. Here's what the albums were saying while all of that was unraveling beneath the surface. SWV sold more than 30 million records worldwide. 30 million. They were one of the most successful R&B girl groups of the entire 1990s. If you've heard Weak in a very specific place, at a very specific moment, if that song belongs to a memory you carry, you already know what I'm talking about. Some of y'all know exactly where you were the first time it came on. That's the thing about SWV. The music reached people even when everything around them was falling apart. The label tried to use them against each other, and it nearly worked. But 30 million records means the music outlasted the damage. Real talk, only 9% of you are subscribed. That hurts. We're spending hours digging through archives, fact-checking every detail, bringing these stories back to life. And if you're watching this far, you clearly care. So hit subscribe. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Now, to my subscribers, barely any of you have joined the membership. And honestly, that stings even more. You know the work we put in. You keep coming back. If these videos have ever made you feel something, if this music means something to you, join the membership. It's $1 coffee a month, and it's the only way we keep this going. Let's build this together. All right, back to it. Number 10, In Vogue. In Vogue recorded one of the most powerful R&B debut albums of the 1990s. They did it on a $5,000 advance per member, and the two men who produced it, who wrote every song on it, made sure they kept almost every royalty check that came after. 4 women, Oakland, California, Cindy Herron, Dawn Robinson, Terry Ellis, Maxine Jones. Nearly 3,000 women showed up to audition for this group. The producers, Denzel Foster and Thomas McElroy, originally wanted 3 members, then Terry Ellis walked in late, Flight delayed, and the blend changed everything. The deal that followed, signed to Atlantic Records, paired with Foster and McElroy, who would write all the songs, produce every record, and control the creative direction. What wasn't spelled out clearly was what that arrangement would actually cost the four women in front of the microphone. Born to Sing came out in 1990. Hold On spent 25 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100. Before recording, each member received a $5,000 advance. Another $5,000 when the album was done. $10,000, split four ways. For an album that reached the top of the R&B charts, pulled in millions, and turned En Vogue into a household name, the producers made considerably more. By 1992, Funky Divas arrived. My Lovin', You're Never Gonna Get It, Free Your Mind, giving him something he can feel. Some of the most iconic R&B of the entire decade. And here's where the arrangement showed its real teeth. En Vogue was no longer allowed to co-write songs on the new album. The songwriting royalties, all of them, went to Foster and McElroy. The women putting their voices and their faces and their careers into these records were generating enormous wealth for the men on the other side of the glass. And if you've ever worked hard for something, poured everything into it, and then watched someone else collect the check, you know exactly what that particular silence feels like. En Vogue sold 20 million records worldwide, 7 MTV Video Music Awards, the first and only female group to receive the Sammy Davis Jr. Award for Entertainer of the Year. Billboard ranked them the second most successful female group of the 1990s, behind only TLC. And while that recognition was real, so was the lawsuit that eventually had to be filed just to establish who actually owned the name En Vogue. The group that defined sophistication in 90s R&B spent decades fighting to control their own identity. The music was real, the exploitation was real, and 20 million records proved that what they brought to it could never actually be owned by anyone but them. Number 9, Guy Picture, 1988. R&B radio is smooth, polished, and clean. Everything dressed up for mainstream acceptance. And then 3 guys from Harlem hit the studio and built something traditional radio didn't know what to do with. Too hard, too street, too raw for the gatekeepers who had been deciding what R&B was supposed to sound like for years, and too good to ignore. Teddy Riley, Aaron Hall, and Timmy Gatling, before Blackstreet, before producing Remember the Time for Michael Jackson, before becoming one of the most important architects in the history of modern R&B. Teddy Riley was barely 20 years old, a kid from Harlem who had been making beats since before most people his age had their own apartment. He could hear something the industry hadn't caught up to yet. He wanted to build music that felt like the street and the church at the same time. The rhythmic urgency of hip-hop, the emotional depth of classic soul, locked together into something nobody had quite done before. He called it New Jack Swing. Some in the industry called it a problem. When Guy's debut came out in 1988, Groove Me hit the top of the R&B chart. Then I Like followed it right up there, back to back. The album was doing something the gatekeepers hadn't expected. It was selling. But the criticism didn't stop. Too explicit for certain playlists, too aggressive for the traditional R&B audience that programmers thought they were protecting. The image, Aaron Hall's raw intensity, the leather and the do-rags and the unapologetic street energy, didn't match what R&B was supposed to look like in 1988. And some radio stations simply didn't play it. Here's what's remarkable about that. The sound that programmers called too much in 1988 became the defining sound of the entire next decade of R&B. New Jack Swing didn't just influence what came after it. It became the blueprint. Every group you've heard so far on this countdown, Color Me Bad, SWV, and Vogue, they were all working in the creative space that Guy helped build. But the group broke apart around 1989 before they could fully collect on what they'd planted. Internal tensions between Riley and Hall, the weight of moving too fast in too many directions, the pressure of being pioneers in a genre that hadn't even been named yet. And here's what's remarkable about the timing. Guy broke up just as New Jack Swing was about to become the dominant sound of an era. The inventors walked away right before the culture caught up with them. Teddy Riley went on to reshape virtually every major R&B artist of the early 90s. But Guy as a unit, the three of them together, never fully witnessed the harvest of what they'd planted. The genre they built kept growing long after they stepped away from it. They were dismissed before anyone understood what they were making, and then what they made became the foundation of an entire era. Number 8. Belle Biv DeVoe. Let me paint you a picture. Three guys who spent years being the quiet ones in New Edition. Not the star, not the frontman, not the one with the solo deal, just the background. Ricky Bell, Michael Bivins, Ronnie DeVoe. And then, the moment they were finally free of that image, they made one of the most influential debut albums of the 1990s, and some of their own people called them sellouts. Here's the tension. New Edition had a very specific reputation: clean, teen-friendly, the kind of group your mother was completely fine with you loving. Bobby Brown had already left and gone edgier, and felt the reaction from part of the fan base. So when Ricky, Michael, and Ronnie announced Belle Biv DeVoe in 1990, there was an expectation from the New Edition faithful: keep it respectable, stay in the lane. They came out with Poison, loud, guitar-edged, hip-hop influenced, with lyrics that were not designed for polite company. Never trust a big butt and a smile. You know the line. It became one of the most quoted lyrics in 90s R&B. And some of the same fans who had grown up loving New Edition looked at this and said, "What happened to you? You changed, you sold out, you abandoned what we knew." But here's what those fans weren't seeing. Belle Biv DeVoe hadn't changed. They'd finally told the truth. The clean image had always been a costume. These were grown men who had been performing since they were teenagers, held to a standard of wholesome presentation that had everything to do with marketing and very little to do with who they actually were. And the moment they got to be themselves, the moment the costume came off, the audience showed up in numbers that shocked even their own label. The album went multi-platinum. The sound they created helped bridge classic R&B and the harder-edged urgency that was about to take over the entire decade. And there's a deeper irony buried in this story. Michael Bivins, the same Michael Bivins who was called a sellout by some New Edition loyalists, became the man who discovered Boyz II Men. He was at a concert in Philadelphia when 4 high school kids tracked him down backstage and sang for him. He gave them his number, he signed them, he helped launch 60 million records. The sellout was quietly building the future of R&B from the same space he'd been dismissed in. And if you've ever been told you abandoned something, when really you just finally became who you were always meant to be, you know that quiet mix of frustration and clarity that comes with it. The people who called them sellouts were buying the album. Multi-platinum, real. Number 7, Jodeci. 2 sets of brothers from Charlotte, North Carolina, drove to New York City with a 29-song demo tape and almost nothing else. They got rejected by nearly every label they knocked on. When they finally got in front of an Uptown Records executive, the meeting almost didn't happen. And then a young intern named Sean Combs heard what these 4 men were capable of and told his boss to listen. Jodeci wasn't supposed to exist by any of the industry's measurements. They were gospel kids who sounded like they'd been raised in the church because they had. K-Si and JoJo Haley, Devontae Swing and Mr. Dalvin DeGreat, 2 pairs of brothers who built their first songs in North Carolina, driving hours to auditions, getting turned away. When they finally signed to Uptown, the image they brought wasn't polished, wasn't safe. Timberlands, baseball caps, raw harmonies that sounded like they were coming from somewhere true. And the industry was uncomfortable from day one. Their debut, Forever My Lady, came out in 1991. 3 consecutive #1 R&B singles, Forever My Lady, Stay, Come and Talk to Me, back to back to back. And the mainstream was still uncomfortable. Too explicit, too intense. Their image was too hard for what radio thought R&B was supposed to look like. But the listeners had already made their decision. Then the legal trouble came. In 1993, serious criminal charges surfaced that would have ended most careers outright. Gun charges. K-Si pleaded guilty to a sexual contact charge. Devontae pleaded guilty to gun possession. The mainstream press, already skeptical of their image, used this as confirmation that Jodeci was a liability the industry was right to mistrust. And when a dispute broke out between the group and their label, Uptown pulled virtually all promotion from their second album. That album, Diary of a Mad Band, with no label support, no major radio push, no mainstream blessing, reached #3 on the Billboard 200 and hit #1 on the R&B album chart. Without the machine, the fans showed up anyway. Complex magazine would later rank Jodeci first on their pyramid of the greatest R&B groups of the entire 1990s. Not top 5. First, they've sold more than 20 million records worldwide, and every studio album from their classic period went platinum. The industry said they were too dangerous to embrace, and the listeners said, "We've been waiting for something this honest." And if you've ever watched something real get dismissed by people who were more comfortable with something safe, you know exactly how that goes. Number 6, Milli Vanilli. In the entire history of the Grammy Awards, there has been one, and only one, group whose award was taken back. Not because the votes were miscounted, not because they didn't qualify, because the Recording Academy discovered that the two people performing as Milli Vanilli hadn't sung a single note on their album. And the part that never gets discussed, what the sales looked like before that day. Fab Morvan and Rob Pilatus were young men in their early 20s, living in a Munich housing project, barely surviving, when German producer Frank Farian came to them with an offer. He had professional studio vocalists who had already recorded the music. He needed faces, a visual identity, something that moved on a TV screen. He offered each of them money to front the project. They said yes, not fully understanding what they were walking into. What followed was one of the most spectacular rises in pop music history. 3 #1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100. The album Girl You Know It's True sat at #1 on the Billboard 200 for 8 weeks. At the American Music Awards in January 1990, Milli Vanilli won 3 trophies. In February, they won the Grammy for Best New Artist. Rob and Fab sat in the front row. And when their names were called, Rob said later that something exploded in the pit of his stomach. Because they knew, and Farian knew, and slowly the truth was creeping toward the surface. There had been a live performance where the backing track skipped, "Girl, You Know It's," repeating over and over, while Rob panicked and ran off stage. Reporters noted the French and German accents. The whispers were growing, but the records kept selling. And when Rob and Fab finally pressed Farian, demanded to actually sing on the next album, To Be Real, he called a press conference and told the world everything. It's a tragedy for me to see the dream is over. The fallout was unlike anything the music industry had ever seen. Arista dropped them. Their album was deleted from the catalog, one of the highest-selling albums in history to simply be erased. Class action lawsuits from fans demanding refunds. And then, in November 1990, the Recording Academy made history. For the first time, a Grammy was revoked. Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan handed it back. The only Grammy Award in history ever taken away. And years later, Rob Pilatus died alone in a Frankfurt hotel room in 1998. Still carrying the weight of a story that was never fully his to control, the faces weren't what they seemed, but the music moved millions of people. And some of y'all heard Blame It on the Rain at a very specific time in your life. And I wonder what you felt when the truth came out. Number 5, TLC.
But he doesn't realize he hurts us so much.
July 3rd, 1995, one of the biggest-selling girl groups in the world filed for bankruptcy. Their album Crazy Sexy Cool was still on shelves. They had just won 2 Grammys, millions of copies sold. and each member was taking home less than $50,000 a year. Their cut per album sold 56 cents, split 3 ways. T-Boz, Left Eye, and Chili signed their deal with LaFace Records in 1991 through a production deal with manager Perry Pebbles Reed's company Pebetone.
The many chances I blew to bring my life to a clear blue and unconditional.
They were 17 years old, no independent legal counsel, a royalty structure that looked modest on paper and was catastrophic in practice because of how many expenses were charged against their earnings before they ever saw a check.
I know that you're gonna have it your way or not.
Recording costs, video production, travel, hotels, food, clothing. According to TLC themselves, the more successful the album became, the more they owed.
Won't leave a trace of not what God given. Is it because my life is in shape? I pray all.
Crazy Sexy Cool was enormous. Creep hit #1. Waterfalls hit #1. The album received diamond certification from the RISA, one of the rarest certifications in the music industry, and one that no female group had ever achieved before. They were the best-selling American girl group of their era, and according to their own public testimony, TLC received roughly 1% of the revenue their albums generated. They were making everyone around them rich. Then the public scandal came. Lisa Left Eye Lopes burning down Andre Rison's house in 1994, and the way the press handled it, as though that moment defined them, as though the whole story was reducible to one night of fire, was its own kind of violence. The deeper fire was happening in the accounting, and they were brave enough to say it in public. Standing in front of cameras after a Grammy celebration, Chili said, "We have sold 10 million albums worldwide, and we are broke as broke can be." That line still hits, because it names something the music industry had been hiding for years. They fought their way out of the Pebetone arrangement after 2 years of legal battles. They renegotiated with LaFace. Fan Mail came in 1999 and debuted at #1, No Scrubs, Unpretty, 2 more #1s. And in 2002, Left Eye died in a car accident in Honduras at 30 years old. The member who had been most vocal about fighting back, the one who had demanded that people see what was really happening, was gone. 65 million records worldwide, the best-selling American girl group since the Supremes, achieved while the industry was actively working to keep their own money from them. That's not just a music story, that's a survival story. Number 4, Destiny's Child.
Why the sudden change? Say my name, say my name. No one is around.
In January 2000, the Say My Name music video premiered on television.
First of all, let me say, I am not the one. Sit around.
2 of the women in that video had never appeared in a Destiny's Child video before. And 2 women who had been in the group since they were 9 years old, who had been Beyoncé's friends since childhood, watched it at home.
With my clique, don't try to change it now. Thinking you gotta bounce.
Nobody had called them, nobody had explained. They found out by turning on the TV.
When you say everything to me comes to you.
LaToya Luckett and Latavia Roberson had done everything right. They were founding members, there since Girls' Time, the original formation, long before any record deal, long before anyone outside of Houston knew the name Destiny's Child existed.
Tell me who. Hey. Oh.
They survived the early rejections, the Star Search appearance, the years of rehearsal, and when the success finally came, no, bills, 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 they were part of building it. Then they asked for one thing, a different manager, and everything fell apart.
Could it be the truth or at the crib with another lady? If you took it there.
Matthew Knowles, Beyoncé's father, the group's manager, moved quickly. LaToya and Latavia were out. Michelle Williams and Farrah Franklin were in. And the world didn't find out through a press release or a formal announcement. They found out through a music video. Their own vocals, recorded by them, played over footage of their replacements miming those parts. I couldn't believe it was happening, LaToya said years later. I was in shock. That level of erasure was shocking even by industry standards. The lawsuit followed. LaToya and Latavia sued for breach of contract. Destiny's Child released Survivor in 2001. Some of those lyrics were later cited directly in the lawsuit. Lines about selling without someone, about not needing those who had left. The case claimed potential defamation. It settled out of court in 2002, behind non-disclosure agreements. But the group's answer was already encoded in the song title itself, Survivor. She took what could have been the end of the story and made it the whole statement. Destiny's Child went on to sell over 50 million records worldwide.
Seconds ago, said you just got in the house. It's hard to believe that you.
The Survivor album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 with 663,000 first-week copies, the highest debut ever recorded for any female group at that time.
Today ain't the same. Every other word is a you okay?
Some of y'all were split on this moment when it happened. Some of you still are. Whether that was justice or just business, I'll let you decide.
Tell the truth, who you with? How would you like it if I can't go?
Number 3, Boyz II Men. Every major record label said no, not maybe, not let's develop this further, no. The consensus across the industry was that smooth harmony groups were past their moment. New Jack Swing was the story. If you weren't bringing an edge, executives weren't returning your calls. So 4 guys from Philadelphia decided to stop waiting for an invitation.
Just like you did, baby, but that's all right. I love you anyway.
Michael McCary, Nathan Morris, Wanya Morris, and Sean Stockman met at the Philadelphia High School for Creative and Performing Arts. They had the harmonies, they had the hunger. What they didn't have was a deal. So one night in 1989, after a Valentine's Day performance at their high school, they snuck into a concert at the Philadelphia Civic Center, a Belle Biv DeVoe show, with no plan except to find someone who mattered. They'd originally hoped to reach Will Smith. Instead, backstage, they came face to face with Michael Bivins of New Edition. And they sang for him right there. A cappella, unrehearsed, surrounded by other artists and celebrities, an improvised version of New Edition's own, Can You Stand the Rain? Bivins gave them his phone number. Nathan Morris called every day until Bivins took them seriously. The group signed to Motown. Motown Philly, dropped in 1991.
Heart is lonely. My heart hurts, baby. Yes, I feel pain too.
End of the Road came in 1992, and it sat at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 13 weeks, breaking Elvis Presley's 36-year-old record for the longest-running #1 single in chart history. Then, I'll Make Love to You held the #1 spot for 14 weeks, breaking their own record. Then One Sweet Day with Mariah Carey held it for 16 weeks, breaking it again. the longest-running #1 singles in the history of the Billboard Hot 100, from a group that every label had turned down. The gatekeepers who declared that harmony groups were finished watched their predictions get dismantled, 1 week at a time. And here's the full circle that still gets me. They got discovered at a Biv DeVoe concert, a show headlined by the very group you heard a few entries ago, the group the New Edition faithful once called sellouts. They were brought in by a New Edition member from the group you're about to hear. Every thread on this countdown, the exploitation, the innovation, the perseverance, runs directly through the moment 4 teenagers sang a cappella in a concert hallway because no one had invited them in.
Yes, baby.
60 million records followed. Sometimes the door doesn't open, and sometimes you just walk backstage anyway. Number 2, New Edition. Bobby Brown once said, "The most I saw from all the tours and all of the records we sold was $500 and a VCR." Not 500,000, not 500 per show, $500 total from all of it. From the sold-out arenas, the hit singles, the international tours, the screaming fans. $500 and a VCR. New Edition started in the housing projects of Boston's Roxbury neighborhood. 5 kids: Ricky Bell, Michael Bivins, Bobby Brown, Ronnie DeVoe, Ralph Tresvant, who found each other at talent shows and practiced with a focus that had no business existing in teenagers that young. They found Maurice Starr. He got them a recording deal. Girl, to make it last. Candy Girl came out in 1983 and became an international hit, and New Edition saw almost none of the money. Starr said tour expenses prevented fair payment. The group sued. They won, moved to MCA Records, but the next trap was already in place. At MCA, they weren't signed directly. They were under a production deal through their management company, and they didn't know that's how the structure was built until they were already inside it. They had to keep recording and touring just to pay down the debt the arrangement had created. Bobby Brown later said the group was treated like little slaves by people who were only interested in money and power and not in the welfare of New Edition. And here's what's important to understand about that. I know that I can count on you. They were still teenagers when this was happening. Under that pressure, the group started fracturing. Bobby Brown was voted out in 1985, partly for behavioral issues, partly under management pressure. He left and eventually became massive on his own. New Edition brought in Johnny Gill, made Heartbreak in 1988, kept going, kept selling, kept influencing everything. Michael Bivins, Ricky Bell, and Ronnie DeVoe formed Biv DeVoe. Ralph Tresvant went solo. Johnny Gill went solo. All of them had careers that stretched for decades after. The group that had been exploited as children became the blueprint, not just for boy bands, but for virtually every male R&B group that came after them. And here is where this whole countdown comes full circle. Girl, to make it last. Maurice Starr, the man who first built them and first exploited them, went back to the drawing board after New Edition left him. He thought carefully about everything he'd learned from those teenagers. The The harmonies, the choreography, the mechanics of a teen fan base, the formula. And he found 5 more teenagers from Boston and built a group designed to take that exact formula to a different market. He said it directly to Rolling Stone. I was gonna make New Edition the biggest group in the world. When we parted, I said, let me show them how smart I am. I'm coming back with a white teen group.
I'm asking just of you.
And the R&B community, they had a lot of feelings about what came next. Number 1, New Kids on the Block.
I see a picture of me all the time.
In 1989, the New York Times wrote about a group's live performance. It was, they said, laden with black entertainment routines. A reader responded with a letter to the editor, arguing that the group was proving that black music has to be translated for white people before white people will buy it. The group being described was the biggest selling act on the planet that year, and the R&B community, every single corner of it, wanted nothing to do with them. Maurice Starr, the same man who had first exploited New Edition and then lost them in court, went back to Boston and held a citywide talent search. He was looking for something very specific. He wanted to take the formula he had built with New Edition, the harmonies, the movement, the emotional machinery of the teen fan base, and build it again for a different market. He later told Rolling Stone exactly what he was thinking. I was gonna make New Edition the biggest group in the world. When we parted, I'm coming back with a white teen group. That group became New Kids on the Block. Donnie Wahlberg, Jordan Knight, Jonathan Knight, Joey McIntyre, Danny Wood.
Yes, it's true.
They were signed to the Black Music Division at Columbia Records. Their early promotion went directly to black radio stations, where Starr had his connections from the New Edition years. Their first album was built from a formula that had originated in black neighborhoods through the genius and the exploitation of black teenagers. And it wasn't until a pop radio station in Tampa started playing Please Don't Go Girl that a completely different audience discovered them, and the label quickly pivoted to follow the money. The hip-hop community rejected them completely. The R&B community called them appropriators. Critics called them a weenie band with no genuine talent. Their dance moves were called derivative. Their sound was called generic black pop. Every accusation that could be leveled at a group profiting from a musical tradition they hadn't built was leveled loudly, repeatedly, and publicly. And none of it slowed the sales. In 1989, they became the first group since 1984 to have 2 songs in the top 10 at the same time. Business analysts estimated their earnings at $75 million in 1990 alone. $75 million. And here's what I keep coming back to.
I see a picture of me all the time.
New Edition, the original. The teenagers from Roxbury who built something true, who received $500 from all of it, who spent years fighting to control their own story. They were the reason New Kids on the Block existed at all. The sound was theirs. The format was theirs. The fan base mechanics were theirs. Maurice Starr took the blueprint they'd given him through their genius and through their exploitation and handed it to someone else. And the R&B world spent years watching a formula built in their community makes someone else the biggest act in the country. Some people will say New Kids on the Block don't belong on a list about R&B. And that discomfort, that sharp thing you might be feeling right now, is exactly why they're at number 1. Because you cannot tell the story of who got dismissed in R&B without telling the story of who got built from R&B.